And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake, Humboldt, and Ankeny, Iowa. Well, how are you today? Hope you're taking a little bit of time for yourself today. We're going to be discussing something kind of lighthearted, but something that's so very, very important. You know, the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And the reality is that you may be one of those individuals that's worked 25, 30, 35, 40 or more years in the accumulation stage of your life. Now you're to that point where you're about to retire. You haven't maybe pulled the trigger just yet. Maybe you're quite a few years away from actually retirement. But today's message is going to be super important because I want to share with you how important it is to have vision. How important it is to have an objective, how important it is to have goals for your retirement. And this is one of those topics that can be very lighthearted. It can be very, shall we say, very dark. It can be very somber, only because I've had experiences on both ends of the spectrum. As a financial advisor and a fiduciary, as you can imagine, you get every walk of life, every personality, every variety and variable imaginable. But the reality is, as human beings, we are all pretty much the same. We need to have something to look forward to. We need to have that expectation. So today, we're going to be discussing just how important that is and kind of the multi-different faceted reasons why it is so important for you to have those. Now, if you're brand new to this channel, to this podcast, to this little video session and series, I really encourage you, stop and take a look around. Come to our website, johnsonwim.com. It's hard for us to know what platform you actually watch this on, but the reality is there is so much more. If you come to our website, johnsonwim.com, not only will you be able to get past podcasts and radio shows, you'll be able to see white papers and be able to read up on financially relevant topics, things that are going to no doubt be affecting you as a retiree or as an up-and-coming retiree if you haven't reached that point yet. You know, the idea is we've heard those who die with the most toys win. Well, the reality is that there's lots and lots of cliche phrases and thoughts about retirement. But at the end of the day, having more income than what you actually need, well, that's my definition of retirement success. And we want to be able to understand and know, how do we take what we've worked so hard to try to save and actually turn it into income? Turn it into income that is going to be there for us and yet still preserving, protecting, and growing our principal. That's pretty important. I also encourage you, if you're much of a reader, get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement. It's available at any of the major book resellers. So why vision? Why have goals? Why have expectations and things that you want to be able to do in retirement? Well, the reality is that we need to have something to look forward to. And oftentimes people do make snap decisions, and then after the fact, they think about it. We've all known that person or people, or maybe we are that person who walked into work, something happened, and we just simply walked off the job. That's fine. That can work out, and there's reasons for that. But the reality is that when it comes to retirement, this is something you've planned or should have planned for a very, very long time. This should be a very seamless transition from accumulation to distribution. This should be a very well thought out transition going from the paycheck to the playcheck. But here's the thing. We want to know, what are you going to do in retirement? And for some of you, you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do for retirement. I don't know what I'm going to do in retirement. Well, that's the exact point of today's topic. Today, we want to be discussing the fact that it is so very important to be able to have at least a handful of goals, things that you think you would like to accomplish, things that you would like to experience, things that you would like to try to create or build, or places you would like to go. These are all goals. These are all things that you could call your bucket list items. But why are they important? Well, let me give you kind of a bizarre story that may help you better understand what I mean. I have a family member who, about 2 years ago or so, was diagnosed with an illness called GBS. Now, if you're not familiar with GBS, we won't get into it, but long story short, this person was sedated and put into a coma, and when they woke up, they were paralyzed essentially from the neck down. Now, that person has had a very, very long, very tenuous, very stressful rehabilitation. And the rehabilitation is going well, but it's going very, very slow. And the reality is that this person has had to teach themselves how to re-walk. They've had to teach themselves how to talk. They've had to teach themselves how to do just even the simplest of motor skill movements, just in order to be able to feed themselves. And in this case, this person being in facility after rehabilitation complex, they have now reached a point where they just desperately want to go home. And who could blame this person? For 2 years, they've laid in a hospital bed. For 2 years, they have had to go through multiple treatments throughout every single day. And most of those treatments not pleasant. Most of those treatments very painful. But the reality is that idea, that vision of wanting to go home, that desire in this person's life was the very goal. It was the very thing that gave him the spark to say, all right, if I want to go home, then I have to be able to learn how to walk. If I want to go home, then I have to learn to be able to dress myself. If I want to go home, then I have to learn how to feed myself. The list goes on and on and on. And I really don't care what your goal is. I don't care what the expectation or the bucket list item is. It is not important to me. It is not important to anyone other than you. But I encourage you, if you're going to be retiring, if you're not there yet, or maybe you have retired, but you just never really gave it much thought, never gave it much time, my friends, you need to sit down and be quiet with yourself. You need to sit down if you're married with your spouse, and you need to have a discussion. You need to think about what are the things that I would like to do. For some couples, it's going on mission trips. For other couples, it's going on vacation abroad to Ireland and to Iceland and to Alaska and wherever. To some, it's building a new home. To some, it's taking and getting into hobby farming or some sort of a hobby in general. Again, it doesn't matter to us, but it should matter to you. And the reality is that you want to have something to look forward to in retirement. Now, the second facet to this is that I, as a financial advisor, as a fiduciary, I and my team, when we sit down and we talk to a person and that person asks us this question, which, as you can imagine, we've only gotten this 100 times, more like 100,000. Can I retire? Can I afford to retire? Well, you see, if we don't really have much of a vision, we don't have really any idea of things that we want to do, places we want to go, things we want to build, it's very, very difficult to ascertain accurately if you have saved up enough money to be able to retire, to be able to maintain and sustain all of that lifestyle, plus the things that you want to do or the places you want to go or the things that you want to build. And so when we think about this idea, can I afford to retire? Well, if your goal is to use all of your financial resources in order to be able to build this $750,000 home, then chances are you may not be able to retire. You may be in a position where all of that building it essentially uses up all of your retirement capital. And so you see, this is something that we want to discuss openly with our advisors. We want to be able to try to come up with a really accurate number as to what this might cost us. it gives us the opportunity of being able to assign a value or cost to these activities, to this project, to these things that you want to do, so that we are able to give you good advice. Remember, the reason that you hire a financial advisor or fiduciary is to be able to provide you advice as well as do for you what is in your best interest, not that of the firm's. And so the more help you can be to us in helping us determine and understand what those activities are, well, my friend, that gives us a real advantage. That helps us a lot. Recently, I spoke to a woman who she makes extremely good money. She likes her job, but things are changing. The corporate world is changing. Higher ups are changing. Atmosphere and culture is changing. And she's getting to a point where she's kind of starting to feel the wear and the tear. She's feeling maybe that little bit of burnout. And she's thinking to herself, man, the wages are nice, but I don't know how much longer I can go. Maybe 2 or 3 years. And in just general discussion, it came out that she loves to cater. She has the gift of hospitality, and my goodness, she's putting on spreads for her independent parents who are living in a over age 55 community, and she's putting on parties, and she does all of this hosting and all of these events that she caters. She might put on, 18 different pork butts and turn it into a pulled pork party. Well, those are extremely valuable details, because guess what? Now we understand what her hobby is going to be. Now we understand if that hobby is going to be able to make her any money. We're going to be able to understand if that hobby is going to cost her anything for maybe some upfront capital, or if that's already taken care of because she's already been doing it for a few years. You see, these are all the things that is important for you so you can have vision, but it's also important for us as your financial advisors. Last but not least, I want to be able to have some degree of an idea of what your plans and objectives are so we can plan logistically. This is very important. Clients sometimes do move. And when they move, and sometimes they move across the country, sometimes they just move a state over, sometimes it's just another city that they move to within the same state. But we want to think about and consider the logistics, not only from, let's say you want to build a home, the logistics of building the home and getting all the planning done and hiring the carpenter and making sure you got the blueprints right and all of those things. But logistically, how are we going to make this income happen for you every single month? Do we want the income to come from this over here? Do we want the income to come from there over there? Do we want to withhold taxes? Do we want to consider continuing to do Roth conversions while we're trying to pay for and fund this project, this thing that you want to do, this vacation goal? You see where I'm going with this? This is something that it's great to have the goal. We want to be able to figure out what this goal is going to cost, but then we want to logistically plan for the financing of the goal. And you might be saying, well, Matthew, I don't have any goals. I'm a very simple person. Well, that's fine, and I appreciate that. But I want to encourage you to challenge yourself. Once you become retired, you're going to have one thing on your hands more than anything else. And my friend, it's going to be time. And you're going to find a way to fill that time. And so I wish for you the very best in taking and challenging yourself, picking up a new hobby, taking a risk and doing something really far out, something that you've maybe wanted to do, but maybe you were too afraid to do it. I have a client of mine who her son challenged her to skydive. Now, I know what you're thinking. I would never jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I know, I said that to myself too. And then I've done it twice. So my friend, the reality is that having a vision, discussing what those goals are, what those plans are, what those projects are, those things that you want to do, that has so many wonderful benefits. And those are things that, quite honestly, I love hearing. Those are things that give me inspiration because we want to do as good for you as possible so that we can see you accomplish all of those goals. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.